this is part two of I split the videos into two parts because I thought, oh my God, and nobody would ever watch a 2 hour video of hour by hour kind of little Excel stuff, okay? But in this video, okay, if you watch it again, it'll be the second part of it. And I'm gonna go through a few of the formulas. And if you're looking at this formula bar right now, you can see the formulas are all easy. They all come just straight from the line of the solar power that hits a meter squared measured in watts per second, the temperature outside, which we have to adjust for because that's not the temperature that hits the panel, and then the wind speed, which I said we'll adjust for because we will use the kind of benchmark data from this Global Wind Atlas, and instead of applying this Weibull function, which wouldn't work in this case because we wouldn't really be able to see hour by hour, we're going to work through and get the solar output, the wind output, the demand, see if there's surplus or deficit energy. Surplus, the red one, is deficit, and when we take that energy, we can take the surplus energy, put it in a battery, take the deficit and discharge the battery, okay? And we have to decide how big of a battery, how big of a storage do we have, and we put these things. I've already talked about this too much in the prior video. And then we already talked about this, but then in this video we'll make the graphs, and I just put the battery in, so let's calculate it. And my theme here is not only understanding the hydrogen strategy or the distributed generating strategy, or seeing, well, if we put a solar on a rooftop, how much, and we put a battery in, how much extra do we have, how much do we have to buy from the grid, and all of that. So let's try this in different years. And I emphasize again, how can you possibly begin to understand what's going on? How can you make a model where you have no clue where the numbers come from? How can you think about different strategies of hydrogen and batteries and how much solar to put in without doing some sort of analysis like this? And it's not that big a deal. That's the whole point. We can get data, which is just, for me, such an amazing thing. It's certainly a lot more amazing to me that you can get this kind of data than some kind of AI. Maybe they use AI to figure out the wind speed or something, okay? So we have these different patterns. And then these are the entries that we can put in a financial model, okay? And making creative graphs, looking at different hourly, monthly, yearly kind of patterns and deciding how to stack up the graphs. And maybe you can make them better. Maybe you can make a speedometer graph or something like that, or how to just use these kind of things to make it flexible. That really, there'll be about at least half of the time in this video devoted to just taking and using sum if, lookup, average if, things like this that takes a millisecond, not a millisecond because it takes a little bit to calculate, it takes a little bit of time, and how you don't need any show-off Excel techniques. You don't need to be a show-off in Excel to try to understand what's going on. So now let's start the detailed analysis. All right, this is the final part of the video. Now, if you're setting up a hydrogen model. Perhaps you want to put the costs and the CapEx and the OpEx and all of that, and the production for solar. And then I suggested putting a separate page for wind and battery, a separate page for electrolyzer, a separate page for ammonia, maybe not. And then you get all excited about financing and all the crap that people waste too much time on before really understanding what's going on. And then you can make your little models. And when you get to your electrolyzer model, you might want to put in how much electricity you get from the solar, wind, and the battery. And it might be the fact that there's some over or under production. So that's where we were. Now, what I had done is, instead of having you type all the Excel in and all that, okay, these are the numbers from, this is where, can't remember exactly where we left off, but I put the dates with the adding the 1 divided by 24 hours and the years. I know we did that, right? Because I now remember we did the frequency, and then we have the wind. Now, the wind atlas said that the wind speed in this location for latitude and longitude was 5.13 meters per second. When we did an average of all of these numbers, it was 4.64. Now, I need to talk about just a little bit about some philosophy beforehand. The question is, if you're making a financial model and you think, oh, I want to do a sculpting, oh, I want to do the debt sizing, I want to do the DSCR. Okay, good. I cannot fathom trying to do one of these models without understanding what's behind it. And what's behind it is, do we have enough electricity with our solar and our wind? And what's the cost of that electricity? Do we have enough electricity at an economic price to make this thing work? And if we just do solar alone, we'll have a very low capacity factor on our electrolyzer. And the question is, will it even work? And around the world, it's clear that people are looking at solar plus wind. So what we're going to do is put these things together. I put the titles together, and I put these little assumptions in, so that we'll be able to just one day change our assumptions. And then what you'll be able to do is just go through next time and take these three columns from that wonderful PV GIS and just plop those in. And then you can fight and debate about whether the wind speed is right, and we, it's clear what the EU is doing is they're trying to get it right, and they're kind of putting it in, and they'll publish something, I think, one day here, and then I'll have to change everything, and that will be sad. So we put our temperature coefficient in. This is this 0.4% reduction in efficiency for every degree above 25 degrees Celsius that hits the panel. Oh my gosh, just saying that's a pain. That's the hardest one. And then we get our performance ratio, and we have to put some kind of AC to DC. This is normally much lower than this, but I put a high one in, and we can see, do we ever have a constraint? We'll go through all of these. And then we finally get our capacity factor, which is measured against the STC, because we measure our capacity that we're going to put in this capacity at STC, standard testing condition. And we can put this in once we have a capacity factor and just multiply it out. There we have our solar, and then we put our wind in. And here was the kind of problem, if you just look at this right here, is that our wind speed was actually higher during the day. In this case, it was a little lower during the day. And this is what we're looking for. And then we use our alpha here. I might have should have maybe put the alpha up here and moved that around. We'll do that later. And then I put some kind of performance ratio, and then we get a capacity factor, CF after PR. How's that? Okay, sorry about all these little abbreviations. Performance ratio, capacity after the oh, no, this is, yes, that's right, where we multiply the capacity factor by 90%, and then we can put our hourly profile in. We just get our hours from over here. We have the hours right here, and then once we have our hourly profile, once we have our hourly profile, we put the demand, and we get how much solar and wind production do we have. I'm going to center that, excuse me, because I'm going to hopefully use this again. And then we see, well, do we have a deficit or a surplus production relative to the amount we need, relative to the amount we need. And this one, where did I put the demand? Just, oh, here's the demand. I should have put a couple of extra things here, shouldn't I have? Excuse me. Okay, here's our demand. And notice I did not use this merge cells. That should be illegal. The merge cells should be illegal. Oh, shoot. Okay, I'm not going to do that. Okay, and then, okay, oops. Let's keep going. Oh, shoot. Okay, sorry. If you, by the way, this is becoming an extremely large file. I won't be able to put the whole file on here. Maybe I can put 1 year of the file or something on there. Just because it's got a lot of data, and it's got a few formulas here and there. And then we put our battery in, and then we start with our battery. Now, I think you should do the same sort of thing. If you're experienced at, I'm not going to add this to here. If you're experienced, we put our capacity in terms of the kilowatt hours. Then we say, well, what's our minimum charge? We have our 10%. What's our maximum charge? Well, the maximum charge is the most we can discharge. The most we can discharge is the opening balance we have. We can't discharge more than the opening balance, but we want to save 40,000. Okay, so we just put minus that, and it's a lot better to set these little things up before you put an opening and closing balance. And then the maximum discharge would simply be the opening balance, the minus the capacity we have minus how much in the opening. We can't charge more than that. So we're focusing on the storage. We could also put a constraint in for the maximum amount of the charge. And then here's what happens. We work through our battery, and our battery really begins here. Perhaps, you know, what I'm going to do here is put this in Shift Control 7 and put this in a little thing. So we can look at our closing balance, and here what happened. Oh, come on, let's get down. Oh, this is where we get down to the minimum. And then once we get down to the minimum, what happens is we're going to have some unserved energy because we ran out of battery capacity. In some cases where we have too much too much production relative to the battery, we'll have too much produced. And it's the same kind of thing. You just look at, we first say, well, how much energy are we producing? And we can take our AK11, just a minute so I don't, this is our total wind and solar we're producing. Perhaps I should have put a little circle around that one as well. And then we take away the amount we charge, add the amount we discharge, and you press F2. That's why F2 should always be used, and that's why these principles of keeping the formula simple. And I just got to repeat it over and over again. I'm sure people are saying, oh no, this is the technical advisor. I don't need to do this. I'm so good. I'm just going to do the fancy financing stuff. Please try to understand it. Just try to understand what's happening. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is very quickly go through once we saw this. And then once we have this surplus energy, you have to find out what you're going to do with the surplus energy. If you have unserved energy, where are you going to get the unserved energy? Or we can also say, screw the battery. The battery is going to be kind of expensive. What happens if we don't put in a battery? What happens if we don't put in a battery? And if we don't put in a battery, we have to wait for a second here. It's going to calculate. Okay, you see down there, it's calculating. If we don't put in a battery, what's going to happen then is we're going to have some hours where we produce very, very little. Here's our total energy served. We have much more variable energy going into the electrolyzer, and we have to test that energy against the capacity, the kW of the electrolyzer. So we have all these choices about whether to make the electrolyzer bigger or smaller, or whether to put in a battery. And you might say, this stupid idiot on the internet, what's he doing? He's making these videos, wasting my time. Because I'm going to do this in so much greater detail. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get 100 engineers, not 100, but a bunch of engineers working on this, these real, true experts, not this kind of simplistic stuff. And so what? You, as a modeler, you need to know kind of how these things work and ask the questions, and then you can look and see what's the right kind of strategy we can do. And the best thing is, if only we had real confidence in this wind, we can put everything together. So that's why it's so exciting, and that's why I thought it's worth a video. Now, if you go to PV-SYS, I just picked one of the PV-SYS, and they had some soiling losses. That means there's some crap on top of the solar panel, and that means we get less. So in that case, I just use their number. Fine, use your own number. Maybe you can ask an engineer. Maybe you look at a bunch of different PV-SYS files and see what kind of data they have. And I'm not going to open this right now. Well, I just am contradicting myself. Just a minute. Okay, you might see in PV-SYS something like this. And they, somewhere up here, they put the soiling losses before they do anything else. So they put the soiling losses way up here, and then they put the other losses here. And what we're trying to do is kind of take some of these numbers, basically aggregate some of these numbers on the top, compute this famous temperature adjustment, put some other losses and other constraints into this one, okay? And then, so we have some soiling losses. We see how much is left over. So I suppose I should press F2 on some of these. That's not very difficult. We just take it right from the in-plane radiation. And then we look and we try to find this hard thing, which is how much, if the temperature over here, if the temperature, and this temperature is not very high, if this temperature is 18 degrees outside, ambient temperature, what is it going to be on the panel? And this Homer, whatever, I looked all over to try to find this. They say, take this formula, take 3% of the in-plane radiation that's got a completely different unit, and multiply that by 3%, and then you get the additional temperature, okay? So let's see, up here, oh, we only have 23 degrees, but maybe if we go much later, we would have more. So you can, okay, if you find something better, or ask your engineer, you put it better, and then we get our temperature on the panels, which is a whole lot different than the ambient temperature. And you can say, oh, there's uncertainty there, and that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. These things it's very difficult to do. And then we take the, you can see the formula, but yeah, I'm just taking the temperature, the total temperature minus 25 degrees, and we're multiplying that by this famous temperature coefficient. Temperature, I'll put this how about that? I'll call it temperature coefficient, and this is STC degree. Okay, and this is a panel adjustment, which I already did. Okay, so those are some of the things. I know I've been through this in another video. So we go and then, so once we have that temperature coefficient, what we do is we say, take the difference between 25 degrees and the temperature, multiply it by this one, and then we get our reduction in output. And then you can take once you have that percentage, and again, you're trying to be as transparent as you possibly can, so we can take that percentage and multiply it by the end-plane radiation, and we see exactly how these calculations work. That's the idea of making a spreadsheet. I don't care if it's whatever. And then we realize that this STC output is arbitrary. It's 1,000. And in some periods, let's see down here, in some periods we might have more than 1,000. And I don't know. Okay. I'm looking. Okay. I thought I might have more than 1,000 in some places. Okay, I'll leave that. Maybe I have to go maybe to the summer months. And then we can say, oh, we have the maximum amount of electricity we can get to this grid is the AC versus DC. I just listened to some long video about Edison versus Tesla, and there's this debate and fights and who was better. And now this man said, oh, Edison was much better. Whatever, okay. So this could be a lot. This is typically lower, and so we say AC to DC. Okay, I better put that as as a thing. Okay, and then that gives us, then we use a minimum formula and that minimum formula isn't so difficult. We take the minimum. We can never get more than 950 out of this because we understand that the STC is the capacity. Now, I used to not do this. I used to think this PV cyst and all that was a mystery, and it seems that I'm stuck here for a second. Okay. And then we put some inverter losses that occur after this. And finally, so that's just nothing big. And then we get our subtotals, and we're generous with the subtotals. And you're saying, oh, maybe that slows down Excel. Maybe I should put some big long formula to do this whole thing, and maybe I'm really smart because I did some really long formula, and then I would go nuts and say, you're just an Excel show-off, asshole, arrogant. No, you're not, asshole. You're just like I used to be. Okay, and then after that, you get your total. If you get a capacity factor, if you express things as a capacity factor, and the capacity factor could be per day, per hour, per year, per 10 years, whatever. This is the capacity factor per hour, and I put the average here. This is extremely high. But then, again, we have some tracking on this, and if you really, I didn't put a adjustment for bifacial here. You could have put, because you could have put some sort of bifacial, and maybe you put aluminum foil just below on top of the sand, and you can increase the capacity even more. So you can put all of these things in, and then we say, oh, okay, I'm going to have 170 megawatts, 170,000 kilowatts, and we just multiply that by the capacity factor, and we get our solar output. And then let's go to the wind. And we start with our wind speed, which is the adjusted wind speed. And you can say, okay, that's our discussion. And I wish, I knew exactly what I've been told that this data is fine, not great, but nothing better or worse than other kind of satellite data you might get. Whether this wind speed data, that's a little trickier because that depends so much on the terrain and all that. That's why you have to do all of this studies and put in the anemometers or the lidars and do all of that stuff. And then you get your wind speed, but then I put this famous alpha factor, and then you can see, oh my gosh, there's a lot of uncertainty associated with the wind speed. And then we have our big thing, which is just a lookup. And we say, look up this one, and that's why I said, okay, we're going to get our capacity factor, and we're going to use this Gamesa, and I said, let's put these in with much more, let's use this interpolate function and get a much finer kind of thing in between, so we don't have to skip by whole meter per second numbers, and then we get our capacity factor for the each one, and you try to say, okay, this is, now we're starting to answer this question about the correlations. And then this is reminding me, oh my gosh, I just had somebody, how I could do a copy-paste circular reference. I don't care about this stuff. I don't care about this stuff when I'm analyzing hydrogen. I care about a copy-paste. So, come on. Okay. Are we really producing, what's the coincidence between this? And that's the last thing I'm going to do now. So we finally get the wind production, and this wind production is going on and off, and sometimes we have no wind production when we have the low wind speeds, and that's exactly what you want. So if you only have a PVSYST or WindPro or something, you need to get the hourly, put the hourly stuff together to see what's going on. And then this could be anything. This could be an airport where we're putting putting a bunch of high wind turbines next to airport, maybe not a great idea, but whatever. It could be any kind of thing where we put wind and solar together and we're trying to meet some demand. And I said, our maximum demand is 120,000. That's our size of our electrolyzer in this case, but it could be any demand. And then I said, okay, we'll allow it to produce a little bit less at night and more during the day. And again, we use a simple little lookup. We say, okay, let's this time look up on AH11, which is the hour, and then let's look up in the demand profile here. Okay, we look up on the demand profile and we have this, and within not very long of a time, then you can get this now. Okay, we can change our demand profile. If you've got a real customer, then you get much more detail, but you need this hourly. I don't see how you can do any of this stuff without looking at, maybe somebody's saying, no, we need seconds, we need minutes. Okay, maybe, if you can get the data. Then we can say, this is our total solar wind production. We just are adding these together. And then we're comparing that to the total demand, which up here I allowed it to increase and decrease. And we do the very first thing, which is our deficit and surplus. So we have too much energy over here, but then we have some red ones. And I used Shift Control Q. I have my generic macros open. And so if we have a limit on demand, or we want to fit this demand profile, we can put this. Of course, if you wanted to change this and make it completely flat, you can see, well, how much could I have done to make it completely flat? And then you put a battery in. And remember, we start with our battery capacity. And we can turn this off by just multiplying it by 0. And then you can look at your minimum charge, which is the state of charge, the depth of discharge, 1 minus the depth of discharge, or state of charge. We put that first. We see what the biggest discharge we can get is. We look, and again, that's where we always adjust it against the opening balance. That's what the opening balance is, this wonderful thing to do. We don't have a very first opening balance. And then just like anything else, our opening balance is equal to our closing balance. And then we use a minimum and maximum. And this maximum of AM12 or 0, I suppose I'll push this over just a bit, is going to be from the surplus deficit, or deficit. And then we use another maximum. Then we say, we have some round trip efficiency. So if we charge the battery, we're going to lose something. And then I make a subtotal. You make sometimes a subtotal inside. And this not necessary in this case, but this is how much we have left over. And then our discharge is how much can we discharge. In a way, when you look at this maximum discharge, instead of taking it against the opening balance, you could have taken it against the subtotal. That would have maybe been better. Okay, so I'm going to do that because we can't discharge more than we've lost from our round trip efficiency, so that's a tiny bit better of a formula. I'm going to have to pause for just a minute. Okay, the only reason I had to pause was with this, whatever, we started in 2005, going to 2015 to 2020. We've got 15 years of 8760 data with all these little formulas. That's what makes it Excel file big. Okay? All this other stuff about whether you have the offset function and all that in. Okay, that can slow you down a little bit. The one thing that's really bad is the indirect function, which we don't have. Okay, so then we have our discharge, and then we have our closing balance, and then we can see, we had a little discharge here, then we had some discharge here, and then we with our minimum and maximum functions, we just have this, and we're making sure that the minimum state of charge is never below our criteria. And now you could, of course, I say of course, now this is just for one year. We have degradation in the solar. We need to make some kind of manual adjustments almost for that. And we have degradation in the hydrogen, meaning that we need to get more and more hydrogen, electricity to produce the same amount of hydrogen. That's like a little child's battery, alkaline battery. This is alkaline if we have an alkaline, electrolyzer. So this is the total amount of served, and then we have some, right at the very end, we have some surplus or unserved energy to meet our demand. All right, and then if we have some unserved energy, we're going to have to go and get that somewhere if we want to meet our demand, or we can just say, let's not produce it all. Now, the first thing you can do is, then let's go over here. This is where we copied this. So the first thing I did, I just wanted to see what happens here. This is, I took SUMIF again, and when you do a SUMIF, you just click on the entire year. And then you say sum if, and I said let's take AK. You can see that I'm taking AK over here, and that's the solar and the wind produced. Okay, and that's, you could use that, and you could say, that's how much I can put in my electrolyzer. But you better make sure that your electrolyzer has enough capacity to serve that. And you can't see that. You cannot see that. This is the big point. Without doing an hour by hour analysis. And let's just do on an annual basis. Let's just see how much served and unserved energy we have. So you do the same thing. You put equals sum if. And then you go to the whole column here, and then you go to this thing, and then you skip across to the one we wanted. Okay, just these little things, and ups. Okay, I might have to, on some of this, I know what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to, let's do the same thing. Sum if, let's go to this one, go to this one, and then go to, how about we'll do this one, unserved energy. Okay, and then we have these ones. Okay, and then we'll see how much. This one we have way too much surplus energy and too little unserved energy. So let's reduce the size of our battery in half, because the battery is going to be expensive. Okay, how about this? I'm just going to multiply this by 0.5. That's all I'm going to do. And then we can start to see what's really happening. Well, not quite, because this is annual. Now I'm going to go from annual, I'm going to go to hourly, because that's what we really can see. Now I don't know what happened. We still had a whole bunch of surplus. Then we have more unserved energy. Well, let's go all the way. Okay, let's just not put a battery in and see what happens. Now, if we don't put a battery in, that's it. This is not giving you the real answer you need, because, well, maybe it is. Just a minute. Let's see what we get. Okay, because we have some limits on our demand. There's a no, that's okay. So now we have surplus energy and unserved energy, and now we can start adjusting the solar and the wind and all that. So we have a lot more unserved energy, but maybe that's okay. We buy it. Well, I don't know. We just produce less hydrogen. Now I think a better way to look at this will be to, let's just look at one single week instead of this. So let's take a day. I've done this so much, a day, a month, and a year, okay? And then once we put the day, let's put 1, and let's put month 1, and let's put 2005. So we'll start that. And then, of course, I say of course, which is really stupid. I just put some of this stuff in, because we might want to look at different days. That's not going to be that interesting. We might want to look at different years, and we might want to, months, and we might want to look at different years and the day. So let's just forget 31st. How's that? Even in February, we could have a dangerous one. So let's put 30 and go to the other sheet and back to this sheet and put this in. Okay. And then we'll go to this one. Will go from 1 to 12. Don't forget to skip the sheet around, and we'll put this one in. and then finally we'll go from 2005 to 2020. Okay, so once we do that, and I was just, as I was doing this, I was thinking, oh God, this is the kind of stuff I shouldn't show in these videos anymore because it makes the stupid videos way too long. Okay, but I'm being lazy and not turning off the video. Okay, so we can just now, the reason we did this is we can push these on the on a graph, and then we do this, and then remember Shift Control H gives us the better format of the date, and then we put our, okay, now I'm going to insert a couple of lines, so I'm going to pause. Now I've tried this all sorts of different ways. If I want 24 times 7, that's 168. I couldn't do that in my head. And again, please, you do this and make an EIS, and then we can take this date maybe, and then, whoops, and that's why we need Shift Control H, and we put equal this plus 1 divided by 24, okay? Shift Control H, and making your own shortcut key. I've gotten arguments about this before, and I've wasted my time pissing people off about this. But then we have these dates, and the big deal with the dates is you can get the lookup. Okay, and let's now show the solar production, the wind production, make a little area graph that will add them together, and compare that to the amount we need for the electrolyzer. And now we can see what we're doing, and we can see, what happens if we don't even put a battery in, okay? So let's just, again, this time, instead of using the SUMIF, you just use lookup, and that's why I tell all these people, all you need really is lookup and SUMIF, and a little bit of index, maybe not, because you could actually do it all with just lookup. So we're looking up the date, and then the first thing is, let's go over here, and it's taking too long a little bit, but let's find the solar energy production. Okay, so I'm sorry if I should be much more careful on this, and oh gosh, how about this? I'm going to pause this and just. So I just did a lookup and went and found the wind production. So that was just in column AF. And then this is the target. I'll call it the target demand. Okay. And now once we do this, you have an example of a week. Okay. Let's go down to the 168 and press alternate and F1, and let's see if we can make this graph look a little better. Now this is the key thing for me. Some of the skill that you want is, okay, doing a SUMIF and all that stuff, but another skill you want is to be able to pick and be able to display this kind of stuff in a good way. Now, this might not work. If I press equal sign, I can get the date. That's our start date. And then let's look at this graph, and notice that if you try to get the dates on here, it won't work. So I'm cheating on this. And then we can change the chart series. Let's make the solar a area stacked, and let's make the target demand a line. And oops, why did the target demand go all the way to 0? That's bad. Unless I did something wrong. Okay, I'm going to move it over here maybe. Put it on top of our other one. And the target demand do we have a hour one? Just a minute. I have to fix something now. That's good. The graph showed me what to fix. Okay, it had an hour of 0 instead of an hour of 1, so I incremented the hour. You can look at that. Let's look at a different month, okay? So it's, again, you can say, why are you doing this? Why didn't you press F9 and all this stuff? And let me just, there we go. And we can see now that the problem here, this is the kind of upsetting thing, and this is the most important thing, is the wind. What's the correlation between the wind and the solar? How much? So in these hours, we don't have enough wind and solar. In these hours, we're having way too much wind and solar. Maybe I can go to the 15th of the month, something like this, and I can see what happened in February. And I just don't see if you wanted to do this, if you wanted to, you do want to do this, okay? You want to be able to look at hour by hour analysis to see what's really happening. And we didn't build our electrolyzer to serve this much. So we're going to have some surplus energy, and then we're going to have some deficit energy. And if we, and we're going to have to figure out if we can sell the extra energy, and that's going to be our problem. And now we can really see what's going on, and it depends on the location and kind of how the wind is really working. How about I think I just did it to the third month, and I'm now going to skip let's skip to something like July, and then let's skip to a different year and see if we get different data. Maybe they made some more. Oops, that's the maximum we can do. And let's pause this for a second. Now we have a more interesting graph. This is what you maybe want. We have a whole lot of wind here. This is remember this was in Oman. We had some rain or something happened in this month. And we still have surplus energy here and some deficit energy here. So let's make, let's change this to 12. No, we did 12. Let's maybe 10. How's that? Because we did month 1, and month 12 and 1 wouldn't be very different. Okay. Well, in this period, we had very little wind. And this didn't help us very much, and we see some of the variation. Now, in your model, you might want to see this on a month-by-month basis. So let's do this. Now, we'll also, perhaps let's try to, this time, look and in this thing, see how much. Let's put some charge and discharge. How about we'll just put discharge? We'll just put the discharge, because we know that we're going to charge the electricity here, and then we'll add the discharge in our area graph. And again, this makes it, it's much more important to be creative than to either say, okay, I know every damn little detail about this stuff, or to say I'm just good in Excel because I'm so fast in Excel. I can do offset so fast. Oh my God. it's much more important to say, how can we present this effectively and explain to our client or our management or the bank what's really going on and why we would need a battery. So let's see if we can charge this. So let's go now, and we've got, let's see how much of a battery we put in here. I forgot what we've got, no battery. Let's put our battery back in. Now, after we put our battery back in, maybe this is way too much of a battery. And remember, you drive your electric car maybe and all that. Okay, I'm going to try to get an electric bicycle. That's what I'm going to do. I can't get my thoughts together anymore. And then we, up here, let's add a little thing, and oh God, where are we going to put this graph? We're going to have to move somewhere here. Okay, shit. Okay, let's, come on. All right. Let's, in this graph, let's, I think the biggest thing to show will be the target demand, and let's, I think we can just put it here and then in the graph make it part of the area graph and put the discharge. And we put different sizes of batteries in, and we see what happens if we're trying to meet this demand. And it's everything, of course, everything in renewable energy comes from the fact that somebody upstairs figures it all out, and you can't take your electric bicycle and just say, go this fast. Oh, I don't know how that works. Or your old car. And so that's the only thing we really need to make a little bit more of an effective graph. And then we can see if we still have some area in here where we can't meet the demand. And we could even put the unserved energy, but we don't need to. Now, the other thing we could do is, let's say I want to do this month by month. So I'm going to look at 2020, and let's put 1/31, is that 2020, okay? And the reason I use that, Shift Control H, and we don't really need Shift Control H, but then let's put equal EO month and go up and put 12/1. Okay, and maybe Shift Control 3 is okay on this one. Shift Control 3. Okay, and then I could 1, 2, 3. Is that 11? Is that right? So let's, for each month, let's look at how much we have from solar, how much we have from wind, and the reason I'm doing this, and then how much surplus we have, and how much unserved we have. And then in our financial model, so we're going to sum this, we'll do a sum if. In our financial model, we'll be able to take our electrolyzer and oops, I can't even get there right now, it seems. Why can't I get there? Okay, I'm not going to, there, okay. In our electrolyzer, we can say, well, okay, here's the capacity of our electrolyzer, and we have how much energy, electricity we're producing from solar and battery, and then we put our purchases, or we can just say, when it's unserved, we can say, let's just put unserved and surplus. So unserved, maybe we just don't buy it because And then we have to understand, can this electrolyzer work if we have a lot of unserved energy? That's why you needed to really look at this hour by hour stuff. And I can't tell you, I know people would say, let me just make my financial model. But here's how we can do this whole thing. It's so easy. We just go over here and we insert another column. And we just right over here put EO month. Okay. And we put comma 0. So we get the end of that same month. And how about I'll press Shift Control 3. And then how about we'll even put it here. And then we just double click on this one. Obviously, double click, duh. And then after that, just do a little sum if on the end of the month and look at how much we have. And then we can really integrate this into our financial model. So again, I'm going to pause one more time and do this because that's just going to be a bunch of sum ifs now. We'll do a little sum if where we do a sum if on this entire column, if that's how you express it and how you say it. We'll do a sum if on this entire column. Okay, and then we'll get our solar and our wind, and we can just plop these in, and we can, okay, maybe this one you could also say, okay, let's do a different year. You know, you can put up here year and see how much different it is. So let's put 2020, and then we'll put start date, and how about we'll put an equal date, and we'll put this year 1 month, 31 days. Okay, Shift Control 3. And this, so we can now we could look at this for different years. I hope that's okay. Aha, sorry about that. Okay, and then so I'm going to save this file and then I'm going to pause and let's do this, and then we'll be finished. And nobody's watching it by now anyway. Okay, so now I hope we're getting to the end. Okay, first I put in the discharge, and we can see now that, okay, here's the, we add that to the solar and the wind, just do a lookup on the discharge, and you see hour by hour, are you meeting the demand? And we're not quite meeting the demand, and in some cases we have surplus. It doesn't show you how much the surplus goes into the battery and how much extra we have. But why don't we go back to, let's look at September. Okay, let's just look at another week. And I might have shut. Okay, here we have, because it seems that we have more with our battery. We're able to fill up more of the demand. We have little bits here, so I suppose we could go and try to put in a bigger battery and see how much that is, and then we'd have to put all of this in our financial model. Okay, so that's our little bit of analysis, and okay, you could add other things or make a separate graph, but I hope you see that the month by month, hour by hour is so important to see, to really understand what's going on. And then we do this month by month. This is what we could put in our financial model. And in this case, we took the EO month, we used the EO month trick. Maybe there's a better way to do it, but okay, I suppose you could do it with the beginning of the month or something like that. Where should I put it? I'll leave it down here. And this time I said, okay, in our model, we would like to see how much solar we're using. Which one is the solar? Maybe I really don't need some of these things at the top. Shift Alt right arrow, okay? And all right, let's come on. Okay, because it's so big, I have to go a little bit slowly. We see how much unserved energy we have in each. So in our financial model, we can adjust the hydrogen production based on the amount of unserved energy we have. We have how much wind we produce, how much solar we produce. The wind is this one, the solar is the blue one. And then we have how much we take out of the battery, and ultimately how much surplus we have. Okay, let's do one thing before we go, and I really am going. Let's double the size of the battery. Okay, and I have to put this plus here, and I might just pause it for a second. Perhaps that putting this little thing here, this what you call this grouping of the rows wasn't that great an idea. So let's just multiply this one by 2, okay? Now, I suppose what I've tried before is you can somehow try to optimize all this. Good luck if you do this with hourly data. You can see how it goes slowly. So when we double the size of the battery, is it finished? Oh, it's just computing. Did it finish? I better go to the formulas and I've got to press this calculate now. Okay, and sometimes even though when Excel has all this data, it will be a pain to use. Let's see, with doubling the size of the battery, if we get a lot more blue area, okay? A little bit more blue area, okay? So that was the size, but is it worth it? This is the big question in hydrogen for me. Is it worth it? Now, I guess we have a little bit of less unserved energy and a little bit more green, but is it really worth spending all this extra amount, doubling the size of the battery, and then getting nothing? Or is it better strategy? Is it better strategy to put no battery in? And if we put no battery in, then we don't have to pay the capital cost of the battery. I'm waiting for it to compute, and we're just about finished. And when we put no battery in, there's our battery going all the way. Okay, and we can see, well, okay, that's nothing special here, although we can look at it for different months. And now we have a lot more surplus and more unserved energy. And in our financial model, we can just see, okay, let's include the solar and the wind and see how much surplus and unserved energy there is. And we'll be finished. So that's the video, and that's enough. So that's part 2 of the video.